finished your 2-week post-op recovery appointment, I'd like to go over what my recovery was like for at least a few weeks after that point. Got some notes here I want to refer to. Looking at week 3, the week after that 2-week appointment, I was mainly taking Tylenol to manage pain at that point. There were a few situations where I had to take the gabapentin. I'll talk about that in just a moment. I was walking a mile daily by that week. Remember to try and get you to walk more and more. I still had a sharp and burning pain in my abdomen. One of the things I struggled with was nerve pain at that long incision, where just any sort of touch of anything would just send a burning sensation. I remember walking around for probably weeks 3, 4, 5 even, trying to hold up my shirt discreetly when I'd walk around. Just the slight touch of it along that incision line would bring that painful burning sensation. The gabapentin that I took was designed to help with that pain. And then on week 4, I hurt myself at the beginning of the week, accidentally stretching too quickly for something. And it was about 2 days that I was sort of out of commission, just having to stay home and rest and relax. It was pretty painful for just a couple of days, but then I was able to get back to the routine, trying to increase my mobility and walking. Even getting up and down for week 4 was still a little bit painful. I was doing it unaided at this point, but still had to kind of hold myself and be conscientious whenever I would get up and down. At the end of week 4, I went ahead and started driving. And in order to drive, they do tell you to wait at least 4 weeks, and you want to make sure you're not on any of the hard pain meds. So Tylenol is fine, but anything else you wouldn't want to do that. And then of course, when it feel comfortable enough where you thought you had a decent reaction time, you could look around if you needed to as you're driving. For the first 4 weeks, I was in constant sense of pain. It wasn't extreme. Again, I was managing mostly with Tylenol and some of that gabapentin, but there was no second where I didn't feel the fact that I was somewhat in pain in my stomach or abdomen area. However, at week 5, that pain just disappeared for some reason. I wasn't feeling this constant nagging pain. Now, I was still at this point, and even up to almost 6 months, occasionally feeling this stabbing sort of pain in my stomach. It became more rare as time goes on, and it would come and go. It wasn't something that was lingering at all. At that week, I was starting to even jog a little in addition to the walking about 2 miles by then. So you're really advancing in your mobility. I was still dealing with the shirt issue at week 5. I still had that sensation of something where it touched the long incision. I was able to bend down okay and pick something up, but still under the restriction of it had to be under a certain amount of pounds. I definitely didn't want to be lifting anything up too heavy, but I could at least bend down and pick something up for paper or a pencil fell on the floor and it wouldn't stop me. But even then, you wouldn't just bend down and get up. You would sort of straddle your legs and kind of do a squat almost and hold your stomach as you got up and train yourself to make that more normal as time goes on. At week 6, I did still have that soreness at the main incision site, but even though I still had lifting restrictions, I was actually pressure washing my driveway at week 6. Still taking it easy, being cautious, taking breaks if I needed to, but actually got the pressure washer out and pressure washed my entire driveway 6 weeks after surgery. Keep in mind that even at this point, you're still trying to consume larger amounts of protein. I was told up to 8 weeks, for 2 months, you want to be increasing that protein to train the remaining kidney to compensate for the loss of the one you donated. But after that 8-week mark, that's when you want to start tapering down your protein intake. I did start back at the gym. At the 6th week, typically I would be working out 2 or 3 times a week. I started going back just once for that week and had to take it very, very easy, very light workouts. For example, if I were typically doing a machine before surgery at maybe 140, 160 pounds, I'm now starting at 25 and able to maybe go to 40, only doing a few reps and feeling it and being very, very cautious about it. You're pretty much starting from ground zero and trying to build yourself up. A year out now, I'm pretty much back to where I was before surgery in terms of the weights, 85% up to 100. So it does take time, and I probably would be there quicker if I were a little bit more self-disciplined within the last year. But starting out at week 6 is when I went back and just took it very slow and very easy. And of course, wasn't there probably more than 20, 30 minutes as opposed to maybe an hour and a half like I do now. In terms of weight, I lost about 5 or 6 pounds at my 2-week appointment after the surgery. So you lose the kidney, which I think is about a half a pound, but you're still trying to build up your appetite at that point. You're not eating your full-fledged meals every day. So don't be surprised, or at least I wasn't, that I lost a handful of pounds. And then up to a few weeks after that, I think a couple of months, I had actually gained in excess of 10 or 15 pounds from when I first donated, because you're not being very active. I wasn't working out. I was just walking and trying to continue to walk more. You're mainly getting back to eating like normal, but you're not nearly as active. So in my case, I wound up gaining some pounds. I've since lost all that and even a little bit more by getting back to the gym and trying to think more wisely about my diet. But it takes a little bit of time, so if your body goes up and down a little, that might explain it. That was pretty much it for the 6 weeks after the surgery. No real major changes from that point on. The only real long-term effect that I felt at the 1 year point at least is I do wake up in the middle of the night multiple times to urinate, likely because I have only one kidney, so the filtration is of course much slower, and we're drinking a lot more water. One thing I've done to try to help manage that is trying to get all my water and liquids in by a certain time and not drink later than a certain time. That was suggested that by my sister actually, and it's helped a little, but I'm still having to wake up in the middle every night. That's nothing fun. I'm hoping it gets better, but other than that, I've not really felt any major long-term effects. You do go to your 6-month checkup to get more labs, and you have to submit your weight and your blood pressure. They're looking for stable labs at this point, and you'll go back again at 1 year and 2 years, and then perhaps 3 at the most. And if you're keeping track of things, you know there's 3 things they're really looking for. They're not to be protein in your urine ideally, and then the 2 numbers for your blood is that GFR, looking at the rate at which your kidneys filter, and the creatinine levels in your blood. Then ideally the kidneys are filtering and putting into your urine, so that not being too high. We're looking at those numbers and trying to find consistency. You're technically in recovery for 6 months, and they're hoping for stable numbers. So it takes about a year. There's 6 months of trying to get to the surgery point, doing the surgery, and about 6 months of recovery. One consideration that I do have is I don't think there's enough data out there following donors long term. In fact, I just read a published article in an academic journal from 2024 calling for more to be done to follow kidney donors. As you might know, if you've gone through this process, you're only followed for 2 or 3 years. And you're told early on, going through the testing, that kidney donors have the same life expectancy as the general population. And my question is, how do you know that unless you're following extensive amounts of kidney donors? There are those who are advocating for more to be done to follow kidney donors, and I hope that becomes the case. But I want to end on a positive note, commending you for your bravery, your self-sacrifice. You should really be proud of what you've done, or what you've tried to do, even if you haven't been able to get to this point, or you're working on it. Not everyone would do it. I hope there's some lessons that you take it from it. One of the lessons I think I did is it gave me a sense of bravery and courage that I maybe didn't have as much as before. If you want to gain courage or bravery, you should do something brave or courageous, right? And it did give me a sense of not feeling so timid. You just sort of have a feeling of, if I could do this, then I could stand up for myself here, or I could pursue this, or I could try to face this challenge. Maybe there's some other lesson you've taken from it. I hope you found something really cool and helpful. And the fact is, you did a really badass, brave thing that not everyone would do. Not everyone is willing to do. And that's okay. Some people just aren't in a position to do it, or it's just not something they can bring themselves to, and that's all right. But you really did something that stands out. You put yourself in harm's way to help somebody else. No, you didn't save the world, but you really did something brave, and that should be commended. And I hope that you had an experience that certainly was successful and was as smooth as possible, and it taught you a valuable lesson about doing something self-sacrificing and brave. And congratulations again. I wish you all the best. And hope you've enjoyed this content. And I want to invite you to add comments below and join in on the conversation. I'd love to engage with you in that. Also, if you know anybody who is going through this process or even just thinking about it, I think you'll share with them these videos. And if you've gone through that yourself, I hope you're inspired maybe to create your own content and get out there information about what it's like. Again, I thank you and hope this has been of help to you.